The meeting of the Subcommittee on Procurement and Open Government of the House General Laws Committee will come to order. Members will indicate their presence on the electronic voting system. All right, thank you, members. A quorum is present. We have a very brief docket to cover today. So we'll go with who I see in the room. We have Senator McPike. Can you come up with, I believe, SB 326?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill. You had an earlier version that took a little bit different approach. This bill provides under the cooperative procurement section of our Procurement Act to allow cooperative procurement as it relates to roofing maintenance and repair or restoration. So currently there's cooperative procurement allowed for in artificial turf, track, stream restoration, and stormwater practices, for instance, as well as playground equipment. This is adding roofing. I typically reserve and a little hesitant to use cooperative procurement on certain things, but when it gets to actual roof maintenance, what we know is that damage occurs because of water infiltration, and so the speed of implementation of repairs is something that actually saves entities money. I think the House version that this subcommittee reviewed had a re-roofing that does not involve in the modification. The Senate version changed that around a little bit, so it's really focused on existing facilities and maintenance and repair to help limit damage that occurs in our facilities. And that is the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? All right, now we'll move to public testimony. Those members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the bill, please come forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the subcommittee, Melissa Assalone with the 51 group here on behalf of Tremco. We are supportive of the bill, and we thank both Delegate Carr in the House as well as Senator McPike for carrying these bills. As he mentioned, we did make an amendment to the bill over in the Senate to address some concerns we heard from stakeholders. We are hearing from some school divisions as well as some other roofing companies that our company works with that this bill would be, again, critical to quickly being able to address roofing infrastructure needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone in opposition? All right, then we'll go online. We have Heather Greenwell to speak against the bill.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Heather Greenwell. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Roofing Professionals, and our association opposes the use of cooperative procurement for roofing services and products. I don't want to bore you with too much detail. We submitted written comments and talked to many of you about our concerns about this bill, and we respectfully ask you to oppose this bill, or please send it to the work group for further review, as you did with the House version 1044. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm taking it back to the subcommittee. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, can we have the response from the
yes,
patron?
Delegate Carr. Senator?
Last comments on what you've just heard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I think what's a little bit different, and I've been in the procurement space for 25, 30 years, is simply the importance of the speed to delivery to repair existing roofs. I think you see school construction, you see leaky roofs, you see this time and time again. We know that it gets more and more expensive unless you repair those roofs. That's why I'm very hesitant to do things in the cooperative procurement space. However, this is one that does make sense in my experience of just the speed of delivery. It's really important that you repair and replace your roofs as fast as you can.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Carr.
Madam Chair, having been on the school board when we had a lot of leaky roofs, I'm going to move to report this bill and send it to appropriations.
All right, the motion is to report and refer to appropriations, and there is properly second. Please go to the board to cast your vote. All right, that bill reports on a vote of 9-0 and will be referred to appropriations. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members.
All right, next up we have Senator Reeves.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. I have Senate Bill 575 before the committee.
All right, yep, go ahead.
Madam Chair, this is came out of the work product of the Virginia Military Advisory Council. And what it would do is provide a narrow exception to the public procurement construction exemption, allowing our federal military installations to enter into a mutually beneficial IGSA, which is a intergovernmental support agreement with localities. The Virginia Public Procurement Act prohibits public body purchases from another public body contract to contracts only for architectural or design projects and for construction projects. That restriction prevents our federal partners or in federal installations from making such purchases on existing city, county, and state contracts. It's a one, well, really two lines. It just says subdivision 1 shall not apply to intergovernmental support agreements entered into pursuant to 10 U.S. Code 2679. And as the federal government continues to operate, I don't think they're operating, Madam Chair, in a BRAC situation, which is a Base Realignment and Closure Act, but with the onslaught of DOGE, what we're trying to prevent is loss of our military assets or any of our bases in the Commonwealth. And this is one way that we can help our garrison commanders, our garrison the commanders or our post naval base, all of them, all 33 of them, in cooperation with them. So it's a way they can get a better buying purchase as well as work that mutual aid out. So that's simply the bill.
Thank you, Senator Reeves. Any questions or comments from members of the subcommittee? All right, we'll take it to public testimony. All those here to speak in favor of the bill, please approach the podium.
Madam Chair, I thought Secretary Williams or somebody from his office was going to be here, but I don't see anybody.
That may be a good sign that they approve it. And so we'll go to anyone in opposition of the bill.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Delegate Simon.
Move to report.
All right, it's been, the motion is to report the bill, and it's been properly seconded. Members will cast their vote. Please open the roll. All right, that bill reports on a vote of 9-0. Thank you, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all.
All right, the last bill we have is SB 50 by Senator Rouse. He is currently chairing the Senate P&E Committee, and so we're going to go at ease to see when he can come over. All right, committee will go at ease. Subcommittee on Procurement and Open Government will come back to order. Next up, we have SB 50, Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who would ever thought this little old bill would create such a fever? SB 50, when I first brought this bill forward, I did not hear from anyone. In fact, I just heard from someone 30 minutes prior to coming to this committee about the concerns of this bill. Originally, this bill just expands the definition of lobbying to include influencing or attempting to influence local government. The bill requires the Secretary of Commonwealth to prepare a list of positions and names of the local government to be revised at least semi-annually and made available to lobbyists to assist them in compliance with the bill. It made it easier so where they can just go online and register as well, so there wasn't a fiscal impact.
One second, Senator. Do we have a line amendment?
Yes, I have a amendment as well.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? All right, the amendment is before us. Can you explain the amendment, Senator, in addition?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. The amendment was crafted with the guidance of DLS, the Virginia Conflict of Interest and Ethics Advisory Council, and the Office of the Attorney General to clarify the definition of local government official, and also amend the reporting requirement for local government officials to those already required to file a disclosure statement, thus complying with existing law.
Thank you, Senator. All right, we'll move to the subcommittee. Any questions from members of the subcommittee?
Real quick.
Delegate Wiley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, I just have a couple quick questions, and you might have to phone a friend, I don't know. But so I guess my first question is what drove you to this? What is the reason for this bill coming forward?
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Wiley. Well, what drove me to have this bill coming forward is I served in local government in the city of Virginia Beach, the largest city in the Commonwealth, over 460-some-thousand. And oftentimes what would happen, anytime we did big economic development deals or any type of land use issue, there would be people there that the public would not know who they are or why they were there. But yet every time we had an economic development deal, they were there. Then it would come to our attention that some of the folks who would be there representing developers were also representing members or had 5 or 6 members of city council as well. And so there was no transparency in terms of who was actually a lobbyist or who was just a resident or who was just there to watch our city council meeting. So this bill was brought forward to bring more transparency to governing, to include local levels so that our constituents and folks know whenever they see a city council meeting or local government meeting, they know who actually represents a third party or works for the government.
Thank you, Senator. Follow-up?
Follow-up.
Delegate
Thank
Wiley.
you. So to that point, has the COIA Council looked at this to review the aspects of the conflict, potential conflict? And I respect the transparency piece of it, no question, but has there been any type of vetting process through that council group to give you direction?
Yes, well, I believe COIA looked at this. They offered this amendment as well.
Okay.
We have a representative from COIA coming up.
Thank you.
Want to clarify?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Stuart Petto, Director of the Ethics Council. To answer the question, I, as the director, looked at it and has some technical suggestions. The council has not formally looked at this bill. The council does not have a position on this. It was not brought in front of them, so they have not looked at it, and we have no position on it officially.
Thank you so much. Other questions? Delegate Simon.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at the substitute now. I'm sorry, I just got a chance to see it. So make sure I understand what it does. So one of my concerns before was with the definitions, that if I'm in the real estate title business and I call the clerk of the court and say, hey, I need you to hurry up and get my deed on record or something like that, am I lobbying him? I think you guys have narrowed some of these things down. So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly so I hopefully can vote for it. So local government official now is just the member of the council or the board of supervisors, somebody who's on a supervisory or policy board, commissioner, council, or a person who's already required to file a disclosure statement. So if I'm calling somebody in, like if I'm a permit expediter, let's say, right? I'm calling somebody to hurry up my building permit through, that's not going to be on this list. And so my attempt to influence the permit, the permit's office to please push mine to the front of the line wouldn't necessarily be lobbying. Is that right?
That's right. That's correct.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. And then, Madam Chair, follow-up question?
Yes, Delegate Simon.
I think the other thing that makes me feel better about this is I could maybe feel a little bit about the definition of local government action. I know there's been some conversation about that, but local government action means the adoption, enactment, modification, or repeal of an ordinance or resolution. So that sounds right. That's stuff that City Council or Board of Supervisors does officially. And then it says, and includes actions related to local, so it says includes. So includes, we know means includes, but is not limited to, right? And then, but also includes, so does it mean, but also includes actions related to local taxes, the budget of the locality and land use proceedings? That's where I get a little bit uncomfortable. It's just related to it. I mean, if you could change in between resolution, it includes that includes. So in other words, an ordinance or resolution that includes actions related to local taxes, the budget or land use, to me, that would be like limiting as opposed to, I think that definition is just very expansive. Do you have any reaction to that observation?
Senator Rouse.
I think, Madam Chair, Delegate Simon, I think in overall, the lobbying definition is expansive. And it's open for interpretations for the courts to determine whether or not if someone was lobbying or not. So if I could call your attention to the exemptions under the existing Virginia Code, Section 2.2-420, there are several exemptions for lobbyist registration requirements. Will probably help answer your question. And Madam Chair, I could read those off if you like. An individual who limit their lobbying solely to formal testimony at public meetings, or who provide information compelled by government action, a person who receives $500 or less in compensation and reimbursement in the calendar year for lobbying, a person who was not compensated and spends no more than $500 annually in lobbying activity is also exempt. An employee of a business, other entity, or local government whose job duties do not regularly include lobbying are exempt.
Delegate Simon, follow up.
I guess my last question would be, now that we've changed the definition of local government official, do we still need the Secretary of the Commonwealth to prepare a list of executive officials? And so I'm looking at 2.2-425 Section B, or is that just rearranging some existing code language? I guess that's just rearranging existing code language. So the Secretary of Commonwealth will still prepare the list of positions and names of local government officials. All right, never mind, strike that question.
All right, thank you so much. And Ethics Council, did you have anything that you wanted to clarify or add? Okay. Okay, all right. All right, now we'll take it to public testimony. All of those in support of the bill, please approach the podium. All right, all of those in opposition of the bill. And we'll go ahead and start the timer for 2 minutes each.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Mark Flynn on behalf of the Municipal League, and our real concerns, obviously we want transparency, we like that. But if I understand the current version of the bill, if it includes policy boards, commissions, councils, other entities established by and responsible to a local government, then that would be a Parks Commission, Board of Architectural Review, Utilities Board, Library Board, Airport Commission. And for our smaller localities where they don't have very big staffs, this is going to create a tremendous amount of additional work and a lot of potholes that they can fall into unwittingly. So we have concerns, regarding that, particularly for the smaller localities that just don't have the depth of staff to make sure to manage all of these things.
Thank you so much. Next.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Cushing on behalf of the American Institute of Architects, the American Council of Engineering Companies. Senator Rouse, I did not get a chance to talk to you in person, did stop by the office a week ago to drop off a series of amendments that I want to explain very briefly. On behalf of architects and engineers, one of the things that we do is communicate very frequently, both within the procurement process, which is very structured and rules of communication exist, and also prior to a procurement process when maybe a procurement is not underway. It's a very important part of staying in touch with the local government. We're concerned about, certainly there's nothing wrong with transparency, but violations of this carry a Class 5 felony, which is up to 10 years in prison. And while I wouldn't expect any of our members to engage in willfully criminal conduct, just having that exposure and liability is a significant concern. And in order to capture what I think is the intent of the bill, you do have a couple of options. As a professional lobbyist myself, I am retained by third parties to lobby. That is a little bit different at the local level from companies that have in-house business development. In this case, I'm going to use architects and engineers as an example, who, for example, might work for a specific architectural engineering firm. Their email is associated. They are associated with them. They are employed full-time. FOIA records indicate, often their subject line or their footing on who they work for. Limiting application of this bill to retained lobbyists might be a more prudent first step. It gets to the transparency thing that I think that Senator Rouse, and these amendments were not accepted by his office, but that gets at the concept of making sure that the public knows who is lobbying on whose behalf in these important projects. I know my time's up. I've got a series of 5 or 6 other amendments that are optional that help kind of tighten the scope of this bill. So we do have some concerns. Happy to work with the senator going forward, though.
Thank you so much. All right, next up.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Paul Battaglia, the CEO of AIA Virginia, the Architects Across the Commonwealth. So as a practicing architect myself, there are times where you go out and you talk to the community leaders about what they have in their built environment, what they need in their built environment, what they want in their built environment. And so they're consultative, exploratory discussions, and we're not sure that those would be excluded from the conditions and the requirements of this bill. So that's our primary concern, that it might be that some of that regular activity that we do, the fact-finding, the informational discussions, may in fact require the reporting requirements and ultimately potentially the penalty that's associated with these actions. So we did meet with the Senator's office, thank you, and we discussed and proposed a number of amendments. So far, we've not seen those amendments in the bill, so our concerns continue. So we certainly do feel heard, but we're also seeking some reassurance. We're appreciative of the audience, but we're appealing for some action and requesting some reassurance. And so perhaps referring it for study to the COIA could help us all understand better who would be and who would not be included within the provisions and requirements of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Phil Abraham, Representative, Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate. We met with Senator Rouse's office a couple times about our concerns. Delegate Simon's concern about the definition of local government action and whether it means it's an ordinance or resolution that includes those items, taxes, budget, land use proceedings, or it can also be read to say anything having to do with budget, taxes, or land use proceedings. So that's a very important clarification I think does need to be made. As Mr. Cushing mentioned, this is punishable as a crime, a violation. And this applies, it's a class 1 misdemeanor for most violations, but there is a class 5 felony provision in there. The definition of what type of entity you lobby is extremely unclear. It says supervisory or policy-making board or other entity. In the state code, there's a definition for state agencies of what a policy or supervisory board is. This has no definition. Churches, homeowners, small business owners, they frequently go before city councils, boards of supervisors for land use proceedings to get a rezoning. You go before your board of zoning appeals. If you pay an attorney or you expend $500 or more, you are caught up in this statute. It's well intended, but is really designed for state lobbying. It's not designed for every one of these local government proceedings that would be captured by this bill. So I really think before you take this big step, it would be very helpful to have the Conflict of Interest Council convene a work group and make sure we get this right, given the broad scope of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Senator Rouse, do you have any words before we take it back to the subcommittee?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I think I just find it incredibly that we have so many folks who are opposed to legislation where in the Senate, I understand this House, but none of these folks spoke up or offer any amendments, didn't email us any amendments. The last week they came by the office and spoke with my staff on certain amendments. But I do want to just refer again to the exemptions part of the section of the code in section 2.2-420 that makes it clear on who's exempt. The last issue that the gentleman spoke about in terms of the state code of supervisory definition. I believe that DLS or Ashley can speak to a reason why that is different different in the state code.
Yes.
It was when he spoke to the supervisory definition, why there is no definition for that
Counsel.
local level.
The definition of supervisory or policy board, if the gentleman was speaking about the definition that's in 2.2-2100, I believe, that refers to executive branch supervisory and policy boards or councils or commissions. So that would not necessarily be the same definition for local boards, commissions, or councils. However, it is my understanding from speaking with members of the Ethics Council that that is not something that is often misconstrued, and that it is pretty much widely understood what a supervisory or policy board, commission, or council is.
All right, Senator Rouse.
Yes, and lastly, if I can wrap this up, Madam Chair, thank you to the committee for hearing my testimony and my on this bill. But just an additional note, again, under existing Virginia code, and I just really want to drive this point home, under section 2.2-419, the following activities are not classified as lobbying: requests for appointments, information on the status of pending executive or legislative action if there is no intent to influence that action, responses to published notices to solicit public comment, and internal communications, as the gentleman talked about, the solicitation of an association by its members to influence action, or communications between an association and its members, and communication between a principal and its lobbyist. It's not are not classified as lobbying.
Thank you, Senator. Taking it back to the subcommittee, we have a couple questions. So Delegate Wiley.
I don't mean to keep peppering you with questions, Senator, but just trying to get more clarification on this. So if I'm an entity that's coming into a municipality and I want to offer an unsolicited private-public partnership opportunity, does that entity, or does my entity need to be disclosed to the public before it's unsolicited, the unsolicitation has been released? Is my question.
I believe there's a procurement process. If you had an unsolicited.
So let's just say I'm building a school unsolicited, right? So I've offered a piece of dirt, and I'm going to build it, and I've got a package deal to the supervisors, for example. Mm-hmm. Do I need to disclose this deal before it hits the press?
No, that would be up to the elected officials to disclose that deal that they have received. This is how we do it. In terms of local government, you would go in closed session, you would talk about unsolicited items, and then you would put it out to public comment. There's a process. You put that out to public comment before saying who it is that actually gave us unsolicited.
Okay, and then the other,
Delegate Wiley,
and then the last one, if I may, Madam Chair, is in regards to these MEI opportunities. We have a lot of projects that are labeled XYZ that want to locate on an industrial site. They can't disclose who they are just because of corporate reasons and all the other issues and the like. And I'm concerned about that on that end from this disclosure side. I'm not sure whether it's wrapped into this legislation or not. My apologies for not knowing, but I do have concern from that in regarding keeping the privacy of those entities as they so wish throughout the Commonwealth.
It should have no effect on that, Delegate White, to my understanding of this legislation. Again, this is just an expansive. The definition of lobbying just include local government. Tried to accept amendments to narrow that local government in terms of lobbying, what that means. So,
thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Delegate Simon.
At the risk of sounding really parochial here for a second, I don't see an exemption for attorneys. So, if I'm a land use attorney and I go in front of the Board of Supervisors and I charge more than $500 for my retainer, I'm not saying that I do, I'm a cheap lawyer, but I'm a more expensive lawyer, may charge more than $500. Do I have to register as a lobbyist? Even though it's very clear I'm Marcus Simon, I represent the applicant in this transaction. I mean, everybody knows what I'm doing there, but it seems like under this, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see, it seems to me like every land use attorney would have to register as a lobbyist. Maybe that's no big deal, it's just sort of cost of doing business, but.
I think, Madam Chair, I believe that for attorneys to answer that question, but if you're charging $500 to do business, represent the city, surely you can pay the $100 a year fee to register as a lobby. You go online, register, and that's that.
Madam Chair,
Delegate Simon.
one follow-up question. So the list, I take a little bit of comfort, right, because I hear a lot of these people concerned about unintended consequences. First, I would say the class 5 felony is only for a knowing and intentional misrepresentation. So you have to know that you're supposed to do something and say something different anyway. So I get there's two different concerns. The concerns about being trapped accidentally because it's overly broad, I don't think is going to result in a felony for anybody. So I'm not terribly persuaded by that argument. But this list, to try and help you, is the Secretary of the Commonwealth is going to prepare this list of positions and names of local government officials. What I don't see in here, it would make me feel better, is if there was some sort of, if I lobby, if their name's not on the list from the Secretary of the Commonwealth, this is, again, the way it's written is to be helpful to folks, but it doesn't mean that if you actually lobby somebody, like, hey, I looked at the list, this person's name wasn't on the list, so I lobbied them without registering. This doesn't say that they're immune necessarily from any of the penalties here. It's just a helpful thing. I would feel better. Again, it's probably a little late in the game. And by the way, I've had a couple of unanimous bills out of the House die over in the Senate with late opposition. So I understand your frustration with that whole process. But anyway, that's just one more area of concern for me. Is I wish this was more of a, just like when we call and we get an advisory opinion from COIA and we follow it, we're good, right? We can't be convicted. If I consulted the Secretary of the Commonwealth site and then if I could rely on that, I'd feel better than if it was just something to be helpful to me.
And Delegate Simon, Senator Rouse, if this bill reports, it will have to go to appropriations. We got a letter from appropriations. So there would be more time to work out some potential language.
And if I'm not mistaken, there is a delayed enactment in the legislation as well.
All right. Any further questions or comments from the subcommittee? Subcommittee operates on motion. All right,
Madam
Sorry,
Chair,
I'm going to.
I move to report and refer to appropriation.
Second.
All right, that bill, the motion on the table is to
I vote for it, but I'll move it.
is to report and refer to appropriations, and it's been properly seconded. As amended. Please, the clerk will open the roll. All right, that bill to report as amended and refer to appropriations has reported on a vote of 6-3. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for working with me on this legislation and members of the committee. Thank you.
All right, that concludes the business of the Procurement-Open Government Subcommittee. The committee will rise.